if you were to explain your value in a couple of sentences on everything you've done and why people should listen to you on business and everything like that, what would it be? What would be a good explanation?
Well, basically, I think that our approach has been one of a contrarian, and that we have focused on making concentrated investments in what we think are undercapitalized or mismanaged companies. Most of these were not startups as much as they were existing businesses that were not working the way the potential should have been. And we got involved and put in our capital and management skills to help them get to the goal line. And as a result, we've made these concentrated investments. Normally, these take 5 to 10 years, but when they are working the way they're supposed to work, the returns can be astronomical. We're not making 10% or 20% on our money. We're making tenfold, 20-fold our money if the deal works correctly. And I can give you a few examples of some of the things that explain that. Perhaps the first deal that we got involved with when I was 31 years old. I became the chairman and the CEO of a public company called Bates Manufacturing Company Incorporated. And Bates was actually the largest employer in the state of Maine. They had 5 1 million square foot textile plants, and they were making big manufacturing known primarily for bedspreads and home furnishings. And we got involved in the company. The company was losing money, and we got involved, and because they had excess capacity. And one of the things that we did was to develop a second line of business called House of Windsor, which was a lower price home furnishing line for the mass market, and that increased their capacity tremendously and turned the company profitable. One of the things we noted, because we were making these woven bedspreads and other home furnishings, a lot of the material was not only cotton, but was based on synthetic fibers like nylon and polyester. And because they were such chemically based, they were adversely affected by wild swings in the price of energy. And along the way, we couldn't afford to buy an oil company, but we decided to make an investment in an energy company because that tracked it, and we wound up making a substantial investment in a coal company called Virginia Iron, Coal and Coke. And the Virginia Iron, Coal and Coke was a beneficiary of the fact that when the price of oil went from $3 to 30 some odd dollars a barrel, the price of coal also went from $4 to 30 or $40 a ton. And these reserves that we had bought for $10 million turned out to be worth over $100 million. And that made Bates into a huge success. So between focusing on broadening the product line by addressing the mass market, in addition to selling to stores like Bloomingdale's and Marshall Field, selling to mass merchants, that made the difference, and that company turned out quite successful. And the shares that we bought at $10, $12 a share when we got involved originally, several years later, we wound up selling for $72 a share. So that's an example of a company that did well. Another company that I can explain, which we had a contrarian point of view towards.
Mark Sassower.
No worries, we can cut that out.
Okay, another company which had quite a successful turn of events is a company called Newpark Resources. Newpark Resources was a company that was in the oil field service business. Their primary businesses was providing mats to oil drillers who were drilling in states like Louisiana and Texas, where they were where the terrain was very marshy. And in order to bring in bulldozers and drag lines on that property, you it would be going like going into quicksand. You had to create a stable surface, and they built these mats, which enabled drilling on those properties to take place. And when the rig count, which is a measurement of how many wells are being drilled, went from 4,200 down to about 1,600, and the price of oil collapsed, this Newpark Resources was in bad shape. The company wound up with $60 million in debt, and they couldn't service the debt, and they were de facto bankruptcy, and the banks wanted to liquidate the company to salvage what they could out of their investment. And instead, we wound up buying their debt, the $60 million in debt, for $15 million. And we then converted that debt to equity and wound up with 80% of the company at what was equivalent of about $1 a share at that time. And on a contrarian point of view, that we thought ultimately things would straighten out. And to tell you the end of the story, over a 10-year period, that stock that we wound up getting for $1 a share was sold for more than $100 a share on the New York Stock Exchange. Not only was it because the oil industry stabilized, but that the company added something to the product mix. In addition to the mats for drilling, there was a tremendous amount of oil field waste that was being generated. And the company figured out how to dispose of that oil field waste in a way. The government actually was reluctant to regulate oil field waste the same way as other waste because they didn't want to shut down the industry. But when we figured out ways of how to process and dispose of the oil field waste, then they came in and said, we'll clean up this garbage. And that add-on business was hugely successful, very big margin business. And and the company that was struggling, doing 30 or 40 million in volume, wound up getting up to about $600 million. And that other business was, as I said, very big margin business. The company became very profitable on the New York Stock Exchange. And I said, over a period of 10 years, we made almost 100 times our investment, hundreds of millions of dollars on our investment in Newpark Resources. Another company that we were involved in, which is a very interesting story, is a company called Xplore Technologies. Xplore Technologies was a penny stock on the Toronto Stock Exchange. And what they did was they figured out how to make handheld devices more durable and rugged, which made it very ideal for markets like the military, police departments, and environments where the environment was very tough, but you wanted to still be able to have access to computer information, and you didn't want it to break down because that would put a stop to the business. So we thought it was a very interesting business, and we caused the company to become a US-based company and moved from Toronto to Austin, Texas, and over a period of several years became the largest producer of rugged tablet PCs. Not tablets, not iPads, but like an iPad, but very, very, very durable, but for the specialty market. And because of the fact that it was highly rugged and durable, the price you can get for that device, because it was going to function under very difficult environment, it became quite attractive. And that company was developed from a very modest business to a company doing a few hundred million in volume. And the company wound up, instead of being pennies, being sold for a few $100 million to a New York Stock Exchange company called Zebra Technologies. And that, as I said, everyone was happy with that, and it turned out very well. I don't want to bore you with too many deals. I'll just tell you one more right now. You can go into others if you would like. We were involved with a company called Communication Intelligence Corporation. Communication Intelligence Corporation was founded by an Asian gentleman, Jim Dow, who, as you know, we have 26 letters in our alphabet, but in China you got thousands of symbols. So they were looking for a alternate means of how to input information into a computer. And instead of using a keyboard, they wanted to be able to write on a tablet and input it into the computer. They developed that technology, and the device worked, but people were loath to spend several $100s for a tablet to input into a computer when you can get a keyboard for free. So it was not commercially successful as a tablet, and the company again fell on hard times and became almost like a de facto bankruptcy. And when the stock had fallen from like $7-8 a share down to 40-50 cents a share, they were in difficult conditions. We met with them and figured out that they needed $5 million to sort of pay their bills, not to go bankrupt. But the problem was, because the stock had recently been much higher, $7-8, and now the stock's 50 cents. If you came in and bought stock at 50 cents, you could possibly, your purchase could be challenged if the company turned out to be successful. Why did they give away the stock at that price? So what we proposed was instead that the company engage in a rights offering the existing shareholders the right to buy the stock at this 50-cent price. They're going to sell 10 million shares at 50 cents a share to raise the $5 million and give all the existing shareholders the right to buy their share of that on a proportionate basis. Ironically, because the company was in bad shape, 90% of the people did not exercise their right. We wound up winding up getting 85 or 90% of that offering at that 50-cent price. And what we thought was very interesting, today everybody knows about the PDA device like the iPhone, and before that there was the BlackBerry. Before that, there was a device called the Palm Pilot. The Palm Pilot was a PDA, was a small handheld device, and their software was not very user-friendly. And the Communication Intelligence Corporation software, which was called JOT, J-O-T, was very user-friendly, and we were able to convince Palm Pilot that they should adopt our software, and which is what happened. And the success of the Palm Pilot became a success for us, and every device that was being sold, in effect, was creating another user for Communication Intelligence Corporation. And the stock that we had paid 50 cents a share for over a period of a few years wound up going to $10 a share. So it turned out, quite well here. It was like 20 times your money on that investment if you had the courage and the staying power and the vision of how to help the company turn around. So these are a handful of examples that over the past 40, 50 years of deals that we made concentrated investments in, took a contrary point of view, and figured out how the company could work if they had more capital, or they made certain management changes, or had more staying power to get to the goal line. And so that, I think, will give you a little background of what we did. And we've created a company, which I'm the chairman and CEO of a company called the Phoenix Group, which makes these concentrated investments, and it's worked out well over the past years.
That was an amazing explanation, and I wrote down a bunch of questions that I have. So, kind of the first
Go ahead.
yeah, the first question that I have is kind of to take me back to the beginning. Where did you learn the skills to make these investments? And, I'm sure you're going to talk about, Harvard and everything like that, but I'd love to hear for the audience kind of where did you learn these skills and run me through that process of actually acquiring the skills to do these investments.
Well, I always had an interest in business. I went to Queens College, where I got a BS with a major in accounting, so I had an accounting background. And from Queens College, I went to Harvard Law School and got a very big background in business. And with that legal and accounting background, I never practiced law and I never practiced accounting, but those skills were helpful to me in analyzing companies. And basically, we were involved in helping these companies that had some good concepts, but had problems along the way, figuring out how they should be properly restructured to get to where they needed to go with some additional capital and with some management changes or additions to get to where they had to go. So I think that no doubt that the legal background and the accounting background was very, very, very helpful. It also pays to be lucky, and we had some luck along the way as well. And sometimes we were involved in because we were already involved in the deal. Things happened along the way that we had no concept of. For instance, when we got involved in Newpark Resources, to be quite honest with you, we thought that we were just buying the equipment that would benefit when the rig count picked up and drilling activity picked up. It's a result of improvement in technology. The rig count never really picked up in a big way because before you would drill 3 or 4 wells to find a well, the technology became such that you were able to drill 2 wells and find oil because of the technology that existed. But we were already involved, and we saw that a big problem in the oil field sector was dealing with these toxic wastes that was generated. And because we were already involved, it's sort of like in a restaurant, the success can very well be not because you're selling a steak or you're selling fish, but because you're able to sell a glass of wine, or because you're able to sell a dessert. The add-on is where the profit was. And we were able to get involved in this service business of processing oil field generated waste, and the margins on that business was astronomical, and the volume that came, was great. If we weren't in the business, we would not have thought about or seen that opportunity. So that's an example of how sometimes things happen, or how you get lucky, or you see something when you're involved. But if you weren't involved, you wouldn't have the opportunity. So I would say that no doubt that the legal and the accounting background was very, very helpful, and we were involved in business deals. And one thing led to another. So that gives you a little background.
Yeah. And another question I had was, I mean, you've had this contrarian kind of investment thesis throughout your career, of,
Yes.
investing in these mismanaged or leveraged companies. I think that's the term you use. But where did you kind of develop that idea? Did you ever think, growing up, that that would be this sort of investments that you make, or you kind of just stumbled into it along the way? Like, kind of, how did you adopt that investment thesis?
Well, look, the when everything is going well and the company is doing well, the price reflects that. So if you're going to make an investment in a well-managed company, you can make your investment, and you're going to wind up making 5%, 10%, or whatever a year as the company grows. What we were looking for was, more outrageous type of returns, and so we were looking at deals where we thought there was interesting potential, but the deal wasn't working. It was broken. It was broken because the business wasn't there, or because the management was not there, or they didn't have the capital to take the next step. So if we found a deal which we thought was an interesting field, but that we could provide the staying power or change the management or make the moves that will make a difference, that's where we were, wound up getting well rewarded. As I said, in the case of as an example, in the case of Newpark Resources, we had to supply them with the capital necessary to deleverage the company, because they were basically bankrupt. Take the debt and convert it to equity, and give them the staying power to wait it out until the environment improved, but also added the product line of dealing with these oil field generated waste, which was the add-on business that was super profitable. So that's an example. Communication Intelligence Corporation, they had the technology of this alternate input strategy of putting information into a computer via writing on a tablet. However, the market in normal computer business was not there. But when we saw that technology that they had was very, very helpful for these small handheld devices, and on those small handheld devices, writing on the screen was an interesting way of how to input that information, that wound up being successful for Palm Pilot and the tens of millions of users, and we got paid for that, for the software. So the if everyone is bullish on something, the price reflects it. If everybody's negative on something, the price is low and reflects that. And if you have a contrarian point of view and turn out to be right, or have the ability to wait it out until the environment changes, then you're going to wind up making some huge returns. Now, of course, there's always a risk that you'll make an investment in something and that it doesn't work, it goes bad. Now, if you're in a business where you're investing $1, the worst thing that can happen is you lose $1. If you're in a business where you're investing $1 and you're going to make 10 cents on the dollar, and if you lose $1, you've got a problem. If you're in a business where you're making investments where you lose $1, or you're going to make $10 or $20, and you have as many wins as you have losses, the winners pay for the losses. Main thing is make sure that the first few are winners, so that you have the staying power to keep going. So we were lucky enough to have a number of winners that was able to absorb any of the losses that we had.
Yeah. And another question, I guess it's hard for me to conceptualize because I'm only 21 years old, but what do you think the role of patience is in these investments? Like, I know your famous saying is like 10 years of famine for an overnight success. So what do you think could you really use this investment thesis if you didn't have the patience? Do you think that that was a skill you developed? Like, what do you think the role of patience is in this game?
In the business which we were in, which is not getting involved in something that's good and it's going to continue just to go good, and you're therefore going to be making 10% on your money or whatever. But you're getting involved with something that's broken and it's not working well. You need to contemplate that that's going to be a 5-10 year play, because it's going to take time to stabilize that, to invest the capital, to make the changes, and before you could see that happen. And I'll tell you something, we were in deals where even after the company actually turned around, bankers and investors were very reluctant. They were loath to get involved and make an investment because of the history of losses. So you actually needed to be there not only until the company turned around, but that it turned around and people could believe this is really happening. And then the valuations changed dramatically. So I think that you need to have capital to have the staying power, and you do need the patience. If you're in the turnaround business, in the contrarian business, you need to contemplate that it's going to be a 5-10 year play. Look, it would be great if you could put your money in on Monday, on Tuesday, something spectacular happened. It doesn't happen that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also another question on the investments, and then I want to go back to another thing, but why was the idea to become the majority owner of it and kind of run the operation yourself? I see like Mark Cuban, for example, investing in like hundreds of companies. Have you ever thought about doing something like that, or you kind of prefer the method of going in and owning one company and doing it well?
Well, we did not have the capital to go in and buy a big, well-established company and pay a big price for it. I mean, that's what the public market's about. You
Yeah.
go and buy shares of Microsoft, or go and buy shares of Amazon, and good luck, and you can do very, very, very well. People who bought shares in Berkshire Hathaway for Warren Buffett and were passive and held it over the years, it did extremely well. But so we wound up finding broken deals that were undercapitalized or mismanaged, and these were smaller companies. And we needed to either be in a position to take control and run it ourselves, or be able to influence the board and influence the company to make the changes that we think were necessary to make it happen. So those companies tended to be smaller companies that were undercapitalized, and then we could come in and make a controlling investment, and that made a difference. Because if let's put it this way, I used to say, if you get our money, whether you like it or not, you're getting us. And so we had the ability, to change the color of the door to the place, or change the hours, or make the necessary changes to implement the results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another really cool thing I want to touch on is kind of your relation to Oppenheimer and Company. So I think that's a really coul thing that I don't think a lot of people know. So kind of run me through your relation to that big company. I think they're managing now like 240 billion assets under management. It's a pretty big company. So explain your relation. And I think you were there for a couple of years at a certain point. So yeah, just run me through that.
Well, actually, as I said, when my background was legal and accounting, and I was, when I graduated from Harvard Law School, getting a job to go into the more traditional background. But my late father-in-law was Max Emanuel Oppenheimer, who was a German immigrant who came to the country and started a company called Oppenheimer and Company. He was related to the Lehman family, whose family knew about difficulties during Holocaust times. And in the 30s, they were able to have him extracted from Würzburg, Germany, where he came from. He came to the US, worked for Lehman Brothers for a while, and then ultimately left and started his own firm, Oppenheimer and Company, which became hugely successful. And then they started a fund called Oppenheimer Fund, which manages hundreds of billions of dollars. And the and he passed away. And during the time the estate was being wound up, I went down to Oppenheimer and Company with the late Leon Levy and Jack Nash when the estate was being wound up, and wound up being involved in the brokerage business. But I was more interested in the investment banking side, more so than the buying and selling of shares. So then we wound up leaving the Oppenheimer and Company, and I started my own firm, which was called Sassower, Jacobs and Schneider, and we made investments, what you would call venture capital deals, such as the kind of deals which we're talking about here, which is where our capital could make a difference in the outcome. So it tended to be smaller deals that were broken or busted, and where our knowledge, our technology, our finances could make a difference in the turnaround. So the that's my background. That Oppenheimer was there for a few years, and it was a great firm, and they had great research. They're one of the firms that was based on a big emphasis on research and analysis.
Yeah. Another question I had, just moving more towards Birch Wathen, was how did you get involved with them in the first place? Kind of run me through your time with Birch Wathen. Obviously, it's an amazing school. I went there for a long time, so just super interested. I don't know if I ever got to know how you became involved with them and everything like that.
Well, I have, you know, 4 children and 13 grandchildren, and I had children that wound up going to Birch Wathen. I lived a block away from the school, and I had children that wound up going to Birch Wathen, and I was invited to join the board, and then ultimately was made the chairman of the board, and I was there for about 30 years. And actually, interestingly enough, I retired from the board. The school had gone through some bad times, and with our involvement, that was one of my more interesting turnaround companies. With our involvement and fundraising and improvement in enrollment, whatever have you, we were able to take the school from a couple of hundred students to 500 students. And when I left Birch Wathen, the company had just completed a $19 million capital raise and expanded the building, and things were going great. Now, subsequently to my departure, the school experienced some difficulty. There was COVID, which adversely affected all the schools, and another problem that was that the headmaster, who we recruited, who was a terrific guy named Frank Conabucci, who had helped build the school up, he became disabled. He became legally blind, so he was not able to do the necessary communication skills and whatnot. And sort of like in the Godfather movie, where I was out, they dragged me back in to come back in and see if I could help turn around the situation. So after being out for about 5 years, I came back in, and we were able to recruit a new terrific headmaster who had great communication skills and has made improvements in the curriculum, improvements in the facilities, improvement in enrollment, improvement in fundraising, and all the things to move school in the right direction. And so that's how I got involved. In fact, I said when I write my book on interesting turnarounds, I think that Birchworth and Lennox will be an interesting chapter. But
Yeah.
the people make a difference, and the same assets in the hands of different people can have a different result.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think we dove a lot into kind of like your past
And
and
by the
all.
way,
Yeah.
the reason that I was particularly interested in Birchworth and is I thought that they were somewhat unique in this sense. There's no shortage of schools in New York City that have academic excellence. Most of them are really pressure cooker environments. They're very, very rigid in their approach. What was unique about what we built at Birchworth and Lennox was not only that it provided academic excellence, but in addition to academic excellence, it was a very nurturing environment. They had a very favorable student-teacher ratio, 4-1, and so they were able to take students and bring them to the best level of their capability. And in fact, we've wound up having some children that came from schools like Horace Mann or Trinity or Collegiate who were not doing well in those environments. When they came to Birch with our nurturing environment, wound up doing great and going on to Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and other great Ivy schools and other schools, you know. So we thought that that was a very worthwhile franchise to see it not only survive but to thrive.
Yeah, I love it. And I was just gonna say that I feel like I've covered on kind of the major bullet points of the past, and so I kind of wanted to hear more about iSIGN, more about your future plans and what you have going in the next couple of years for your business and everything like that.
Sure. Well, look, I'm now 84 years old, so I am of an age where many people are retired. I feel that when you become retired, you sort of become retarded, and I try to keep my finger in the pie and to remain active and apply my skills. My involvement is with a company called iSIGN Solutions. And iSIGN Solutions is a very interesting company. It's a company not dissimilar to DocuSign, which provides electronic signature solutions. We do so much business over the internet today, but if you do a contract or you do business over the internet and you need to make sure it's legally binding and secure, you then have to stop, print out an agreement, get it signed, FedEx it or whatever around to make sure it's binding. But when you have electronic signature, you have the ability to do that instantly, paperlessly, and that's the advantage of e-signature. Now, DocuSign has done that very, very well in the US and is a dominant factor in the US. We wanted to become, in effect, the DocuSign of Europe. And we've entered into an arrangement with a company called Cegedim, Cegedim. And Cegedim is a leading healthcare provider in Europe. They're based in France, and they have 5,000 employees, and they have 80 offices in 10 countries. And they were interested in the paperless transactions because they have highly regulated business and they need to have documentation. And if you could do that with e-signature, that would be great for them. So we said, why would we want to go ahead and spend hundreds of millions of dollars to develop an independent sales force when these people are already out there. And we entered into a strategic alliance with them where they are our marketing force in Europe, selling the iSIGN solution. And we're optimistic that this could turn out to be very interesting and very successful. Problem in Europe is that the simple DocuSign type of normal e-signature solution doesn't work in Europe because legally they don't accept that type of signature. So we had to spend millions of dollars and a couple of years developing a higher standard of electronic signature. We became a European, what's called a European Trust Service Provider, and that's a higher standard of e-signature. And if we now go out and market that, if that gets accepted, it could be a very interesting revolutionary thing for Europe, and Europe could be using e-signature in the same way that is done in the US. The problem is that in order to get this, the European Trust Service Provider standard, which has the ability to issue a certificate where the government, in effect, is saying that your signature is legally binding. It's a one-on-one process. It's like going to a bank for a bank guarantee or going to a notary to get it signed, and it's costly and time-consuming. So we've developed a procedure whereby you can get that done remotely and cost effectively. And that has been just recently approved by the government agency. So if that all comes together, then if you can get this higher standard of e-signature in Europe and it's cost effective and available, that could be a real game changer and hopeful for iSIGN. So that's what some of my time has been involved with, in addition to turning around Birchwatch and Lennox.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I feel like now that we talked about your future plans, your past, I kind of want to hear some of your advice from the things you've seen, the lessons you've learned. What would you say? I know there's a billion things you could probably offer, but what are some good pieces of advice you'd give to someone who's looking to get into business? I mean, I'm only 21 years old. What are some good piece of advice for whether business, life, all the sorts, if anything comes to mind?
Well, the first go out and marry a very rich girl. That would be very, very helpful. And number two, I would say is that it's important to have the necessary skill sets, right? Whether that's legal, whether it's accounting or whatever. I think it's helpful to have background working in different organizations that you could apply elsewhere. But as I said, I think it's important that one have patience and the ability to see it through and go after the things that you feel passionate about. And if it doesn't happen in a day or two, it doesn't mean that you're wrong. It may just need some more time and effort to make it happen. But it's always easy after the fact to say this is the way you should do it. We will see what's happening. There's new technologies, artificial intelligence, new things on the horizon. So let's be hopeful and see if the world survives all the chaos that's going on between the war in Ukraine and what's going on with Israel and Hamas and the open borders that we have and a whole host of things. That's enough to make you concern, right?
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on AI and how that you think it's going to change a lot of things?
Look, there's always going to be changes coming, and I haven't given I haven't given it all that much thought, but no doubt that the technology is an important factor. Look how you talk about take computers, how that's changed the whole world. How I've now some of the changes have negative implications. Let me give you an example. We are finding that in school at Birchwater, that the children who are in school should not be using iPhones, and that we find that the social media has negative implications, and it takes away their ability to have proper social interchange with their fellow students and others. And it was exacerbated by COVID. We people spending all day on a screen. So we just implemented at Birch a philosophy that the children will be not able to bring their iPhones into the classroom. They will need to lock them up and during the school day. Now there are exceptions where there are health issues where you need to communicate and what have you, but we'll deal with that separately. But so not all changes and not all technology is great. Uh, we are all aware of problems. An example of TikTok and how it pollutes a lot of the brain power and time that children spend on it. I myself uh, have nothing to do with social media, and I encourage my children, my grandchildren, what have you, to avoid it, because you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. And if you do something that looks dumb and stupid and it's recorded, it's going to be there for a long time. And the college that you're applying to or the job that you're applying for will have that. And is that a good thing? So I'm not a great believer in too much of this, you know, social media. I believe it's great to have proper communication. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying, but I think you understand what I'm talking about. That everything has could have benefits, but it has abuses, and you have to be careful of how you use it.
Yeah. I'm sure when you were younger and the computer and the iPhone were coming out, they were probably saying similar things about it as well, that it was going to wipe out all the jobs and it was going to change everything. And we've adapted and survived. So I'm interested to see what happens. So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly, exactly.
yeah. So is there any more? I mean, I've definitely covered all the bases I wanted to talk about. Is there any more piece of advice or any other bits of wisdom you wanted to share before we get off?
No, I say be healthy, be happy, and play the cards the way they're dealt the best you can. And if at first you don't succeed, try and try again.